Welcome to Universal News TV, your bilingual news channel, in English and French.
The main objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area are to create a continental market for goods and services. According to experts, African Continental Free Trade Area could help African countries lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty and increase the income of 68 million others who live on less than $5.50 a day. The first step in the implementation of the Free Trade Agreement will be to reduce tariffs on goods from O countries. So, what are the real benefits of the Continental Free Trade Treaty? Let us now listen to the answer to this question by our analysts who are on the set. Listen.
So we have about 33 countries that have ratified it. Is it that they are not interested, or is that they are looking at it that it's going to be difficult because you need to open your borders? If you want free trade, you need to reduce taxes. The people need to be able to move in and out. That's how the trade can work. And are countries ready to do that?
Well, I think we are putting the cart before the horse. You know, I studied very little economics. I studied some economics. I bought O-level economics books and I read them. You know, what you learn at O-level is more important than what you get at the degree level. Because they're giving you the basic principles. Is demand and supply. Un point, entry. So let's forget about what is happening. This one doesn't like that one. He has a big head. He has all those things. What is the African country A selling to the African country B? That's where we begin. Because if you don't have something to sell, then China will bring it and sell it. That's the bottom line. So we are saying, before we even start quarreling over who is doing what, let us have a database of who is producing what and will be selling to whom. That's the bottom line. So once you do that, and then when you go in all our supermarkets in Africa and check them out, you will see that 95% of all the things you find on the shelves are imported. That's the big problem. And where are the textiles coming from? Where are the cars coming from? Where? Then back to your own local industries. What exactly are you producing? So when we are so dumb that we grow cocoa and coffee that we don't consume, then even the little monies, because when you put that on the world market, you're not even the one deciding the cost of those things, and then they give you a few pennies. Instead of using those pennies to help yourself at home and develop yourself, you carry the pennies and go and buy Chinese rice to come and eat and go defecate. You see, that's called foolishness. So you see that we have to actually sit down and ask ourselves the question, why are our children unable to do the things? So the African Free Trade Zone and whatever you have to say is very lofty and very beautiful. But when you are talking about Africa, you're not thinking of the houses and the trees and the animals. It's about the people, the human capital. Someone said that GDP means gross domestic productivity. What are we producing? That productivity, most of the times we are thinking of minerals, and we're just looking back at minerals and so on. No, the real thing is that human capital, being able to transform water into wine. That's what is important. If you don't have the capacity to transform water into wine, then some other person who is able to do that would control you, whether you like it or not. That's the bottom line. We need rice in Cameroon, but we are unable to grow rice because we go to school and we don't study how to grow rice. And you need rice, so you must import rice. And when the Chinese don't have enough good rice, they will make plastic rice and feed you with it. So the bottom line to all of this is that the school systems in Africa should be changed, because what you have as a school system does not and will not solve your problems. For us to be able to do what we have to do, we must be able to produce. If we don't do that, we'll get nowhere.
Thank you very much, Jock. Sheikh, looking at the system that has been put in place and calling on African countries to rectify the treaty, giving them the advantages of it, how possible do you think they are going to integrate this idea and it's going to work well for them?
My mother used to always tell us that when you go to the farm, if you listen to your eyes, you never get started. because you're going to see that the amount of work.
It's too big, and you don't even know where to start from. Yeah.
So I think we should first have this optimistic approach that we can do it.
Yeah.
The others who are doing it are just human beings like ourselves. That said, Africa is not Europe. Africa is not America. Africa is not China. We should look for a solution our way. Now, let us look at a few fundamentals. The surface area of Africa is 30.37 million kilometers. That is more than China, USA, Europe, Great Britain, Germany, all combined. Now, what it means, and you can infer from this directly, is that if you gave Africa the amount which was spent to build the road infrastructure and the electricity infrastructure and whatever, in America, China, and Europe, it will not be enough, because the area is much bigger. So we should not try to do the things the way they did it, because they are in a different reality. The total African population is 1.3 billion. China has 1.4 billion, and they have to live on 9.6 million kilometers, which is less than almost a quarter of what we can find in Africa. We've always been given the impression that our resources, our wealth, is much in the
list of it, even the way that it is priced, is the list. Everything that comes from here is not that.
What I was about to say is we're given the impression that our riches are in the soil, and that Africa can get rich by selling the minerals. That is another strategy of deception.
Only that.
And they take advantage of certain situations. For example, when South Korea was industrializing, there was an increase in demand, like the doctor said, of certain raw materials. And that led to an increase in export of those raw materials in Africa. And the European press and media were quick to show how Africa was already becoming, getting double-digit economic growth and so on, in order to give hope that by going along those lines, we can actually develop, which is false. They want Africa to be the source of raw materials. They go as far as trying to tell Africans that they have to decrease their population. You know, one American consumes more than 40 Africans. In other words, if the impact on the environment is the reason to ask people to decrease the population, then if you cause the Americans to decrease their population by 1%, that will have the same impact on the environment as 40 Africans. So in your opinion, where should we start decreasing population? Now, Africa has got some fundamental things. It represents 60% of the world's arable land, will represent 90% of the world's mineral resources, will represent 40% of gold, 33 diamond, and many other issues which are here in Africa. One Canadian military strategist did a study, and he said, if the African countries would pull together 1/3 of what they are spending on military equipment and use this money to employ former Soviet Union engineers to come and work in Africa, they'll be able to reproduce all the equipment all military armies in Africa have got just by using resources from Africa. Now, why don't we do it? It's because of the mindset. We've been built up to think as slaves. We have to first liberate ourselves from that. Musicians have sung, religious people have taught, even though some other religious people are actually the problem rather than the solution. We should harmonize our education and share both the formal education in schools and the informal education. The president of Tanzania, during this so-called pandemic or whatever it is called, he actually did something which, if it was spread all over Africa, would have increased our enlightenment. He called the representatives of the World Health Organization. He gave them 4 samples, given human names. One was the blood of a certain bird, the other one was engine oil, the other one was the juice from pawpaw, and the fourth one was something else. And they came out that the pawpaw juice and the engine oil was positive, that they had COVID-19. Now, why didn't this go viral in Africa? I actually see this in an American television channel publishing it. Because we don't trust ourselves. The African prefers to watch CNN and France 24. That is slave mentality, which we have to remove. Now, we have to focus on action and hard facts are not propaganda. There's somebody called Dr. Oronuku Rashidi, who has spent his whole life studying the evolution of the black race in the world. Those are the people we should get in touch with when we want to formulate what kind of history we teach our children. People like Walter Rodney, who wrote the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Those are the people who will give us real enlightenment. To say the truth, when I was going to school, I knew how to draw the British map before I could draw that of Cameroon. Now, that is not education. That is brainwashing. Now, so this tendency of focusing on Europe, in Africa now, the dream of Africans is to have the same road infrastructure as they see in America and Europe. That is not a solution. Just look at the surface area, that is already a very bad solution. The per capita expenditure for those roads is going to be the highest in the world because we have the highest surface area. So we should think these things otherwise. And in my own opinion, I think concerning things like transport, we'll do better to make our own planes. In reality, put 5 million francs in my hands. I'm not talking about, and I can produce a plane which can carry 5 people just using wood I saw in Africa. Now, why don't we do that? We're going to make a better job having a few runways, making our own thing to carry goods here and there than to think we're going to have enough resources to spend on huge road infrastructures. They say what is true of planes is also true. You can use planes, you can use balloons, you can use even power parachute. You can get just cloth and make it into form of a parachute and get a motorbike engine with a small propeller in your back and you start flying. You make out of cane some structure with 3 wheels and can carry 1 or 2 bags of something to deliver somewhere. Now, why do we keep thinking European? We should look at our own story, our own problems, and solve it our own way. Now, in the 80s, in China, you had steam trains. That is because the Chinese, that is what they could produce themselves. And they preferred to use what they could produce rather than import electric trains manufactured in Europe. Why don't Africans think like that? You find somebody priding himself on a huge car of 90 million. When not even a screw from that car is produced in his own country, what is he proud of?
Even the route, where to pass with the car.
What is he proud of? We can use our waterways. You see, I went to a place in Douala called Yope, and I saw somebody who took 5 planks of the type we call Movenga, which is yellow, very resistant, took 5 pieces of plank and put it together and made a canoe, and then stitched the thing and then used polystyrene to dissolve in petrol to seal the joints. And then after that, painted it with tar so that it doesn't get. Now we can go one step further. Now you have to buy an outboard engine to put on that. I say we can use an old car engine. That will bring down the cost of the engine to 1/10. Because you can have an old car engine for $250,000 here, which is about perhaps $500. Now, and if we have such a thing, we can produce those things ourselves and use our waterways. Why don't we do it? Why do we have to have electrical installations spread all over the nation when we can have standalone power units based on several types of technology which we have ourselves? And there are people promoting it here.
Yeah, don't have.
You can have your toilet can produce gas, which can light your house, can power your generator, can do enough for cooking. Why do we want to copy? Why do we want to copy what is coming from Europe? That's the problem. There are people who are doing this right now. I can give you address of people who are trying to develop the biogas system, but nobody is paying attention because when they look at the films coming from Europe and the series and so on from Brazil, those are not the things which they see.
As Doc said, the education is not what we have. It's not. That's not the orientation which is on the ground. So there are people who don't even think to that light. Sheikh, just round up. Let me go to.
Okay. No, concerning telecommunication, we don't have to follow what is happening elsewhere. Since you say I should round up, I can just say that we should look for our own solution.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
And we should export internally and externally inside Africa. And when you talk of export, we already have to solve that problem of infrastructure. That we don't have to wait for roads to be built to go to Nigeria. We can look for other ways. And there are many other ways to be used to do this. We can promote environmentally friendly ways of doing things inside Africa. We can export services. We can digitize the economy. What is happening now is that some Chinese companies are coming, confusing many Africans about the cryptocurrency issue, and then getting a lot of money out of them. And the minister actually had to sign a ministerial order closing down a huge number of who had already swindled billions each from Africans. But why? Because the government itself and the people, the population, they were not given the mindset. So in rounding up, I'll say we should use the media as a tool of education rather than entertainment.
Okay.
We should change the educational system to actually represent the African aspiration, the African values, and bring something good in the African future. We should remove Africans from all the various forms of slavery: academic slavery, biochemical slavery, spiritual slavery, emotional slavery, psychological slavery, cultural slavery. There is a whole lot
everything.
Of right. Remove them from that so they can actually feel
Yeah.
that I too, like our Christian brother said, that we're created as in God's image. We Muslims said we are the God's representative in the world.
I'll be back with you, Sheikh.
Unfortunately, Africans don't think that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chegen, looking at what is happening under free trade, which is a very good move, but it has not really still been put in place because other African countries are still being pulled on board. The advantages are large. Why do you think it's still slow for other African countries to come in?
Let me say something first, Emmanuel. This topic really, I drove from Yaoundé to come and participate because for me,
I heard you
for me, it's like that's a state when African countries will understand that we have to get across and put down all the constraints that stop us in getting ahead. That will be the solution for the African trade and financial development. But let me say something. We have to avoid being pessimistic. Sometimes things might just look like, can we make it? But I thank God some of our co-panelists already developed on that angle, so I'm not going to come back to that. Imagine that you needed 2 world wars for Europe to come to what they are today. Do you think that France loves so much Germany to be today in the European Union? They love themselves. Love does not exist in this kind of things. It's not a matter of love. It's the matter of being realistic and looking at the things. And Africans, we need to understand that we need to stop being candid in our approaches. Because we sit down as we are talking, and I had cases in my life. I'll just take maybe one best example. I was dressed like this, a Frenchman, good dress, yesterday in a restaurant in Yaoundé, and as they brought us achu, because among the 5 that were seated, 3 chose to eat achu. They brought with spoons, with forks. These are simple things when we are developing these issues. But as I say, no, you bring me some water to clean my hands, to eat my achu. The others they look around because this is a place also where you have some, huge personalities that come to eat. They're afraid that maybe they may see some soup on your shirt after and all this. And I eat my achu with my hands. I eat with hands. And every situation, every occasion that I've had like this, I try to do the same. That went forth from right back in London some 15 years ago when I got a lesson from a lady, a Chinese lady from Hong Kong. She served us tea, and as I was asking to put some sugar in my tea, my friend, a British man, he finally said, please, Pascal, if you don't want us to be chased out of this restaurant, to never be accepted here, please just drink your tea as it is. These are simple things. All is inside. It's not a matter of offer and demand. I just heard Doc, thank God that he said he's not an economist, and he says it's a matter of offer and demand and all. We have the Ndop rice in Cameroon. That's one of the best rice that is known and praised all over the world. It's not a matter of demand. It's us first to praise what we have, starting by ourselves, rather than waiting that the others will come and tell us that this is what we need. I think that we have 2 problems, Manuel. We have 2 big problems. What we produce, we don't like. Yes, what we produce, we don't like. I look at a young lady like you, if you permit me, she's just on the plateau. A lady today wouldn't, do her hair, import some wonderful hairstyle from India that we never know where the origin is from. Maybe from, she just got in the tomb, they cut the hair and sell it, and very expensive. If she doesn't do that, she's not in style, She's not
It's not
accepted.
beautiful enough.
She's not beautiful enough. While God has given us beautiful women with beautiful hair, God never makes a mistake on that. So I feel, Czech developed it so rightly by talking, we are remaining slaves in our mentality. And the worst for me, and goes to the church. I work with many pastors in many settings. And I saw that the worst slavery is in the church, where they are remaining the worst colonized that you can imagine. Will you imagine in the churches today, even called revived churches, or almost all the churches, we are still singing songs that we got from the colonizers, having multiplied in the books, importing them, while our youth can create something. We can use, but if you get in a church and you see the balafon is used, this one is a traditional, that is traditional. These things are inside the head. It is inside the head. God gave you those traditional instruments to praise Him, not to go and borrow the ones of someone to come and praise Him. You see an American come to visit your church and he comes and hear the same songs that he heard a week ago in his church. How do you feel? How does it feel? How does it look like? We need to come back at ourselves. And the only way to do it is that from our own setting, above talking like we talk. Because the way we talk, the next day, if one of us here, because that case is my life, one of us is appointed in that system, the next day he has to follow the system. You don't walk according to the system.
You're pushed out.
You are pushed out. So the main thing is that individually we need to start showing this thing and saying that, as I said, as I took that case, how many cases like this? We are in Cameroon, another meat that's called arrow. The same way, when you look at every Cameroonian, ask him, when you eat your arrow with a spoon and when you eat it with the hand, do you feel the same taste? No, I'll ask you, Doc, do you feel the same taste?
No, it's not exactly the
You have
same.
a different taste. It's not like that. I imagine myself once in London, still in London in a restaurant. I eat my chicken and after the head of the bone, I'm saying it openly to all of us Africans. I start eating the head of the bone. All the wives, they look like me like that. That's an animal. They don't say it in England, they wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
It's the Frenchman that will start making noise and all, but the Frenchman, the Englishman, they just all turn and look at you as an animal. And I'm enjoying my meat. I don't care. We need to get to that point. Now, as I was talking about, let us avoid being pessimistic. Why did I say that? You are the two world wars to bring these big countries to understand that without unity you cannot make it. Because the European Union knows there's a big giant, America, standing there. We need to stand in our economy together against them. Now, Africa, our little settings, small countries, if we don't understand that what is happening to us is simply normal. It's simply normal. I will take another example now. I spent some time in Guinea Equatorial. Emmanuel, if you see billions, that the state of Cameroon and the state of Equatorial Guinea. When you stand in Kiosi is a city center where you have Gabon in one side, Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea on the other one. The government at that moment was moving. They built some wonderful roads, especially from the side of Equatorial Guinea. A motorway, 2 ways, spend a lot of money. But today, when there's a little problem, they close the border. Since more than a year today, you have no trade, official trade between Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea. But the trade is going through the forest, where military are capturing and getting money, but the food and things are going through. But because pride is there, Cameroon wants to make us think that we cannot make it without. These mentalities, we need to understand it's in our favor to get it all right and work together. You see, the Bible says, I'm going back to the point of we developed talking about love. The Bible says that so two cannot work together if they don't agree. The Bible didn't say if they don't love. It's not a matter of love. It's a matter of agreement. If we work together, I'll get my own benefit, you get your own benefit.
Yeah.
So let me
You're
just
not obliged to love each other. You need to think of your country and the people you're serving.
Fine. You see, thinking at your people you are serving. The point is that until now, the African nations that we have, do they really have at the head those who love that little lady selling bananas from the morning to the evening? They don't have this in mentality because the system has been put in a way that it needs to satisfy the predator who put him there. And that's the point. We need to go back from there and get on the table, being courageous enough to talk about the real issues, our real problem, not spending time correcting. If it was like that, it should be like this, it should be like that. Getting deep and putting in the wound. You know, now I say that this is where to touch the real problem. If not, there's no need wasting time. Because I feel, not just to learn, every country knows the advantages of the free trade zone.
They do.
I don't think that no country, they know, you should just talk about the transborder infrastructures and all this thing, the work that is going to come to our youth, rather than to get into immigration in these wide countries where they are getting nothing, as Sheikh Jobs explained.
Do more of export than import.
If you know the number of lies that they will put out, so that African people don't even realize the land that we have, the Arab land that we have. Nobody knows about that. Nobody talks about that. And are you think that to succeed is out? I was talking yesterday with my uncle, who said he resigned. I remember on my own time, I got a good, wonderful job in England. And on the day I was resigning, well, my manager looked at me like a madman. So what are you going to do in Africa? What can you do? I said, my friend, if you know I go to drink the yellow, we have some soup that's called the yellow soup there. Even if I'm just going to drink, there's no life. We need to get the youth to understand this thing. We need to look at them in the eyes. We need to work together with them and say, no, that part. And maybe, as Dr. Justice Tulan said, education. Maybe we need to get back again at the roots of education and get them to know the truth. The languages are there. We have to use them. But that's not a problem for me. It's never been a problem. You know, Americans went to the point of talking of American English. You've got to do. It's English. They have been colonized by England. They got the independence from England. The pride took them to change some words to say we are American English, but it is English that they have. So English for the language is not a problem for me. But the point that we need to get on the table and do the right thing, looking at ourselves in the eyes, stop being candid. We have to do it by the example.
Thank you very much. So let's get to Dr. Eric out there. Give us your own opinion about this free trade movement and the advantages it put forth and how it's going to help the continent. Do you see it working?
Thank you so much. And thank you to my co-panelists again. Very, very good and interesting points that I'm hearing. You know, when in July, way back early 2019, the further move toward the free trade area, continental free trade area for Africa was being finalized, and now that it's been launched through what you are showing, I did my best to go back to a study that I conducted in the for my dissertation and my doctoral research at Temple University. And I did work at the time on the ECOWAS. We understand that the ECOWAS started as an economic union first. And it was created in 1975 to improve the economic capacities of the member states by intensifying internal and interstate trade, harmonizing, custom rules, and the free movement of people across the borders. We got to realize that, in the early 1990s and then by the year 2000, unfortunately, this economic dimension of the ECOWAS failed. Of course, we have a lot of statistics that, I want to spare you for now, as I look into these things. But why did I go back to these important matters? Before the Continental Free Trade Area, the African countries have worked together, for some of them, and many of them actually, within the different regions that we have, and put together some regional economic communities to facilitate, again, intertrades. I guess my question is, where are we with those things? The second thing I want to say, and which will also lead me to a question and my thoughts into those things, is that we have the impression, again, that every 10 years, or maybe every 20 years, the African heads of states come with another, let's say, token or tool to inspire hope. It is a beautiful thing, but at the same time also, it calls for a lot of questioning. And I will put the questions again coming up. When I look at the free trade area or the creation, I want to say, from a realistic point of view, and also using some post-colonial approach in here, I see it again as another attempt, maybe consciously or unconsciously, of African leaders trying to create again a space. The said space, I believe, for me, shall be, or the said space shall be, including the elimination or the reduction of poverty at the lowest level, looking at the farmers, looking at the poorest of the poorest on our continent. How do we lift them up? How do we make sure that all these individuals who do not have access to basic education, to elementary education, how do we make sure that people who do not have access to health care, which is a human right? As we look at this free trade area, these are the questions that I ask myself. And I also look at how do we create a very substantial level of employment on our continent. When we look and consider that the average rate of unemployment and the ways in which young people in Cote d'Ivoire, for the case we take in here, can wait even in their 40s to get their first job or even start earning a salary on a continent where life expectancy is so shortened by all that we know as a factors. So I ask myself those questions. Another question that I bring in here is what President Jakaya Kikwete talked about not long ago, the political will. It is one thing to decide and ratify and sign, implement a free trade area. It is another thing to take the necessary measures, both internally, bilaterally in between the countries, within the existing region that we have. And some of those points were touched upon in here. At this point now, I wanted to look at some of those things. We all remember the enthusiasm with which we greeted the NAPADs at the beginning of the 21st century. The big question again is, where are we with this? We all understand the 2063 agenda for the African Union. But as we are marching, we all thought in here, I'm sure that, the year 21st century will be the era of what? Less political conflict and less instability in Africa. Where are we with that question? So, what does the free trade area represent? As we look into that, with all hopes again, but again, not as full as my co-panelist said, we are at a stage where we are capable of opening our eyes and questioning the directions that things are taking. When I listened and I read the documents, I also saw something that said, free trade area, a promotion of liberalism. Emanuela, it jottled me. It frightens me. I am afraid of this word, liberalism. Why? Because in the 1990s, early 1990s, with all the political measures, including the structural adjustment program that were implemented, they were built on neoliberalism, opening the markets, eliminate all trade barriers, implement to the core the Washington Consensus. And we heard that it will lead to prosperity after a tumultuous period, or after a period of pain. Where are we? Those African countries have moved from being so-called poor countries to poorly indebted countries, or heavily indebted countries. Are we scaling back, or are we moving forward? Another question that I have that also frightens me is, are we necessarily looking at free trade, or are we also including free and fair trade? Another question that I have also is, as we look at this free trade area, I think the first speaker on this panel, and I am sorry for not getting your name, said something that, what really rung a bell to me. He put human beings, the men and the women, the children of Africa first, then to be followed by the economy, or to be followed by the politics. At the end of the day, as I said earlier, how do we lift people up? When I look at the impact, therefore, of this free trade area, I want to look at the infrastructures that we have in Africa. I want to look at the ways in which we have allowed, or we are allowing today in Africa, the free movement of people from one country to another. Because if we are talking about goods and even services, we also want to understand that today, as a brother said, we are looking at the Western world even when it comes to education. But we know that, with the inception of the BRICS countries, there have been some sort of reshuffling of the trade patterns and even the geopolitical patterns in there on a weak basis. Maybe the South-South cooperation that we see is being represented in here, I believe, and therefore it brings hope, but at the same time, I question, where are we with our infrastructure? The roads. How is it easy, Emanuela, for me from the Côte d'Ivoire to go to Ghana? Should I fly, or should I travel, or should I drive a car? Even within our respective countries, how is it easy for people to transport some agricultural products, goods, from the hinterland to the coast for trade, for instance? These are the things that I'm also thinking about, which should facilitate this free trade area. I am looking at another aspect, which is human rights. You see, when it comes to our continent, I do believe that, and I agree with all the other panelists, we don't want to always look outside. Looking outside is a good thing, because we learn. But where we fall short is when whatever we learn is automatically implemented or applied to our situation without understanding the realities of the continent. How do we therefore resolve the political instability, which includes also the increasing terrorism? The reason why I mentioned the ECOWAS is because 20 years and 25 years after the creation of the ECOWAS, which was meant to reduce the dependency of the African, West African countries on the European countries and change their trade patterns 25 years after, until today, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, those countries actually do export more to the outside than they do export to each other or import from one another. This is something that we also have to look at and understand in here. And I want to end on that, Emanuela, with another question which was raised. Education. Education. I was happy when years ago we saw a movement of many African countries deciding to send their children or their students to, let's say, India, for instance. Right? Bangalore became the hub of technology, and so many African students, were there. I'm hoping to see something similar, because the free trade area should actually be built on a certain infrastructure that really also facilitated the free movement of people, of African ideas, of African education. Other than that,
okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eric. We're almost at the end of the program, so we'll just go around the table for last words on these. Let's talk about, with you, let's talk about import and export, which is what is really lacking in the country, because when you look at many African countries, they spend more time, as you earlier said, importing things. And which is a big problem, because they spend time importing things and they don't have money to build things that they can export.
That's right. And then to understand that, let's just make a few words and then I say something. For us to go anywhere, we have to look and weigh at ways and means. We have to do what it takes to reduce importation and increase exportation of finished products. If you are exporting timber, exporting oil, exporting cotton, that is a very primitive business. Okay, it's a very primitive economy. I'm sorry I'm saying it, but I'm using the most crude word so that you get it. Maybe you will not forget it. If you are selling cotton, cocoa, coffee, timber, oil, it doesn't matter the tons and trucks of it that you sell is primitive. So the question is, how do you make it modern so that you add value and get something? Because you sell a whole ship of raw cocoa, but when they might finally make the chocolate, it's just a little truck of it is worth your ship of
About
cocoa.
10 times.
Yeah. So we need to do something about it, and the answer is technology. Okay. That said, there is a lot of violence going on in our countries in Africa, and when I thought about it very carefully, I realized that that violence is linked to the economy. Like I have said before on many other forums, and I will continue to say it, hopefully someone will hear and will make sense. In life, for every country or for every individual, you need the politics and then the economics. You need the politics and the economics. But in Africa, we have grabbed the politics and then let go the economics. And when we are talking about economics, it's not just economics as it is, it's entrepreneurship. It's another concept of economics. Entrepreneurship is when you train your children to be able to read the signs and the times in their environment, see what problems they are there, and then look for solutions to those problems, okay, themselves, and solve the problems. And because you create wealth by solving problems, and therefore problems, it doesn't matter where you go in this world, there are always problems, but the difference is that some communities have entrepreneurs who solve the problems as we run away from the problems.
That's what we lack.
Yes.
That's what we need to
or you
work on.
call the Chinese and the French to come and solve the problems while you are drinking.
Okay,
You understand?
Thank you very much.
That's the problem. We need to
We
correct
need to
that.
work on that. Let's talk about security, which is in Africa. And so even though we're asking people to other countries to open their borders, we saw what Nigeria did for the past almost a year or more than 8 months. Their borders have been closed. Nigeria has been complaining that they are unable to get things in. And the president said one of the reasons he decided to close the border was because he wanted to build up their agricultural sector. Rice and the rest was just pumping in and there was no control. And he has had a lot of problems with those in the borders. Even those in Cameroon were complaining. It's of recent that the borders are open, but not even all yet. So there's a lot of insecurity. He said they were smuggling arms and drugs, and those were the things he was fighting for. So don't you think these are some of the things that are hindering this free trade?
Of course, as I earlier said, we cannot talk about free trade if we live in insecurity, because people should be able to do business freely. Business knows no sound of the gun. You know, yes, business is tranquil. It is something that is much more like quietness is one of the aspects of business doing. And talking about that too, I'm happy that it is Ramaphosa, the South African president, who is after the president of African Union now. And we have known about what has happened in South Africa in the past with xenophobic attacks.
Yes.
We cannot be talking about free trade and talking about unity in Africa when in certain countries we don't want citizens of other countries to be in your country. You cannot. I mean, you cannot. That's why I talk about the preliminaries. We must first of all be at peace internally before we get out. So I just hope that Ramaphosa will be able to solve this issue of xenophobia and set the example. Secondly, the African president themselves should set the pace. That when but the fact that you are sick and you are only looking at Europe, France and America and all those places to go get cured, instills in Africa that insecurity too, a health insecurity, meaning that they know that the health system is not correct for any Africans, and that is why you find most ministers, they copy from that. Once a minister even have a small foot surgery, he's running to Britain, to Belgium or whatsoever to go get cured, and that we cannot build a free trade with that. There should be confidence, and that starts with education, because people should be educated to know that Africa has potentials. Because when you look at even America, you have so many doctors, engineers who have left Africa and they are working in America and Europe. How can you talk about free trade? Because I want to look at it and use even common terms, because sometimes, like talk about demand and supply, it is still a very big word. As a civil society, sometimes we want to use words that is understood very well in the quarter. I want to talk about the needs of the people in the society, the needs of the people. Well, if you have a need, I think that there is, the need, they used to say that necessity is the mother of invention. That is what it is. And I even saw the issue of coronavirus as the world was locked down as an opportunity for Africans to start thinking about the needs of internal needs. I think that was an issue, and I thought that God did it for a purpose. And if Africans did not address the situation and take advantage of it all, then then they may never have another opportunity of this nature. Because during this period, we rediscovered our needs, and those needs we were not able to satisfy during this area because the borders were locked and there was no movement. It was time for us to be able to actually invest in these needs and invest in the youth and invest in the education that we need during these sectors and be able to finance people. To even call for tender and ask people to be able to propose and see what we can be able to do. If we didn't do this, then there is a problem. We know that in Africa, someone was asking what are we selling. We are selling a lot of things in Africa. Don't we have telecoms in Africa? We know of the telecommunication giant in Africa from South Africa. We have countries that are, producing oil that other countries need. There are so many things that we need, that we can buy, that we can sell, that we can sell among ourselves. But we need the security, because if we do not have the security, but border security, we cannot do it. Look at the Central, the CEMAC. Look at the ECOWAS. Look at the East African Union. ACAS. We need these groupings need to come together and be able to invest in security that will be able to create an affordable economic environment for people to be able to,
they are sure of their security.
That is what
Thank you very much,
about.
Mr. Michael.
They say money no one noise. That's what we do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. Share last words on these, talking about probably the tax system in the country, because that's another thing. Taxes here and there, people are unable to meet up. It's too high, and people just prefer to go in for the cheap things. We're almost to the end of the program.
Yeah, since you usually always give, I said this program actually needed more time than what.
Definitely, we'll fix some other day.
What I say that Paul Kagame proposed that they should harmonize the custom tariffs in Africa and isolate 1% to use to finance the African Union. And the 1% would have actually been more than what they are now receiving from Europe as a subvention. Nobody listened to him. We should harmonize the taxes all over Africa if we want to actually have this free trade zone. And the African presidents should be serious. President Buhari signed the Africa Free Trade Zone.
And
then just shortly after,
2 months
because
after.
some courageous small country called Benin tried to expulse a predator back to France, and this predator had long enough hands to reach into the Nigerian government and cause them to shut the borders, thereby blocking 80% of the export of this small country, Benin, in order to teach them a lesson that you should not tamper with us. Now that an African leader, if the Hollywood leaders, the Hollywood film actors should get hold of this, they will make films which will say when someone is giving you his word, they will say, what kind of word is it? Is it a real word or a Buhari word? Now, so if he does that, how can we be sure that anything he says tomorrow is serious?
A lot of people criticize him for that.
Now, another thing also is that Nkrumah said Africa needs, what he said at the time, a high command. But today we'll say we need some kind of Pan-African army, which is controlled by the African Union. And especially, this army must have a well-developed intelligentsia, secret service. Because right now in Africa, anybody can come and destabilize where he likes. Anyone can come in from outside and cause that tribe to start fighting that, create some kind of, fund some religious
problem, and everybody starts dying.
But if we have a well-coordinated secret service, they will track this down. They should be given full access to all countries. They will track this down, and they can begin to go to what the security people are looking for. Right now, if every country has to handle it on an individual basis, it will not be possible, because someone will usually come and cause heads to knock, and then people will have problems. Now, we should also have funds create a mechanism which we should use to encourage countries who will allow immigrants from other countries into their country
to work or to do trade.
There should be some kind of incentive, because when this thing will start, Equatorial Guinea will say that, oh, we're 750,000 only. If we open our borders, we're going to be completely flooded, and then our culture will be lost. So we need some kind of incentive which will make countries to allow people, because when it will start, actually competition between states is supposed to be the motivating factor. If you want to be corrupt, You don't want to have a transparent system. People will leave and carry their ideas to where they can apply it. So that alone, we should give people a good enough lesson. That if I keep doing what I'm doing, that my brother there is going to become very prosperous in his own zone, his own territory.
And we'll have more of what you would have got.
Right. We should also create an African language.
You just talk about that.
Well, because if in front of a British man, there will always be an imitation. Even if we have to speak the English language, we should modify it to suit our purposes.
Yeah, Paul Kagame was talking of Swahili that could be put in the whole of Africa, but we know that's going to. We have so many languages that some people will never accept.
No, Muhammad Ali, for example, said, "Why do you think they say They say black male? Couldn't they say white male? Why do they say that somebody has a dark heart, meaning that he's bad? Why is the devil always black and the angels white? Those are all things which bring us down. A person cannot say my heart is black, meaning that I am bad. My skin is black, means that I am good. So we should not blame our daughters when they start putting on cream in order to remove the because we are pushing them towards the right. So we should either create our own language, which is different. The Europeans have not shown that you can do it. They created Esperanto. You can do something like that, or at least modify what we're talking in such a way that we don't tarnish ourselves with our own tongues as we're speaking.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Mr. Tegan, last words on this. Sorry about that. We are out of time.
We don't have so much time.
Yeah.
This was really a very important topic.
Very. There are always things we'll definitely talk about it because this is not the end.
Because for me, that's the issue of free zone is like a game changer for African economy.
Yeah.
And it's like a game changer. It's a reality, and we need to really make all Africans understand that.
Get on board.
We talk also about the failure when that was tried at the level of the regional level. It was tried. I once was still on this plateau or 2 times tried to develop that. I take the case of Central Africa. This issue of language is very interesting and very important. And I suggested, listen, we have the found language in Central Africa that is spoken by almost all the countries, if not 4 of them. And the found can be developed. And but you see, everyone you say, right, sitting down after thinking.
Everybody wants to speak their own language.
But still, Emmanuel, that would be the pessimistic way to look at the issues. Why do I say pessimistic? We need to know, African all over, we need to understand that we are still in a jungle. Let us not think that this is going to be easy to implement. I take the case of a predator like France. France is not going to sit down and watch you guys put off the France CFA. We need to understand that. And that's a power. We need to sit down and understand that's a reality. That's the best way to face your enemy. That's why Paul says in the Bible, when I shoot my bullets, I make sure that I reach the target. He says in the book of Corinthians. We need to understand, not sit down making noise and all this. We need to really praise, know the value of our enemy and attack. Sitting on the table, we should not say that we have to avoid sitting on the tables with French people, with our predators. That's a reality. That's a reality. We don't get deep in that. Once I share on this same plateau, I remember I was sitting where Dr. Oz and Celestin German was sitting there. I share with him, my friend, you cannot implement a positive plan in Cameroon at the moment without involving the French. That doesn't mean I support the French. This is being practical. But knowing that these guys are powerful. Look at the way to let him see, like Moses did with Jews, to tell the Egyptians, listen, if you don't give them food to eat, they will not be able to walk. So feed the slaves that you have, so that they can work for you well. So we really need to sit down, look at the things as they are, and be practical, pragmatic, and I feel that we can go somewhere. I mean, we don't have time.
Thank you very much. So let's end the program with Dr. Eric in Ivory Coast. What's last words on this? I beg your pardon. Last words on the free trade zone and how it can be implemented, because it's really going to be good for Africa.
As I said earlier, let's keep our fingers crossed, as we said, when we were younger, IMO, and hopefully that, we'll get it right this time. But again, it is a good thing if the head of states, the ministers that are in charge of implementing this free trade, Continental Free Trade area, listen to what is coming up from the bottom. I want to end my contribution to this wonderful debate today by looking again at one of the two areas. Number one is the middle class. You see that, again, I am very worried of the term liberal or liberalism and opening the market, eliminating, trade, tariffs and all that, and having free trade instead of fair trade to be adding on to that. But I believe that one of the ways in which the African countries can maximize and take a good advantage of this is to create within their own countries a good, I can call quote unquote middle class. What does that mean? Who controls the mid sector of the economies? In Cote d'Ivoire, Emanuela, we know that up to 75% of mid-range, small, and mid-sized enterprises are owned by foreign consortiums. Where is the place of the Africans, the Ivorians? This is another thing I wanted to add on to that. Other than that, let's remain hopeful, but at the same time, let's remain with all the questions in it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much.
Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, has signed the free trade agreement aimed at increasing trade among African countries. Eritrea is the only African country not to have signed the agreement. Here, John Roberts, for Universal News TV.
Thank you for following us on YouTube, and if you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so that you will not miss our next videos.